Last week, Keir Starmer told Laura Kuenssberg this.
I am absolutely convinced that we will only deliver that change. I'm absolutely determined we will if we do the difficult things now. I know they're unpopular. I know they're difficult. Of course, they're tough choices.
A note there, you said, you know it's unpopular. Are you willing to be unpopular?
We're going to have to be unpopular. Popular decisions aren't tough. They're easy.
Well, if unpopularity was Starmer's wish, he got exactly what he wanted. According to YouGov, 55% of the public now disapprove of the Labour government. That's up from 30% in July. And only 19% of us approve of the government. That's down from 30% when they were first elected. Now, that is a pretty dramatic decline, and it's reflected in voter intention polls. Labour already down 6 points since the general election, with 29% saying they would vote for them. Of course, we're 4 years out from the next election, so voting intention polls shouldn't be taken too seriously. And in any case, Labour will take comfort in the fact they're still doing better than the Conservatives. But the speed of their slide is still historically unusual. Owen Winter at The Economist has plotted how a governing party has polled in the days after winning a general election, and it usually takes a very long time for them to fall below the 30% mark. So it took Blair's Labour 3 years to fall below 30% after the 2001 election. Well, that's 1,104 days. It took Johnson's Tories 2 years to fall below 30%. And even John Major had over a year before the Tories went under 30. For Starmer, it's been a mere 70 days. So what's the cause of this dramatic fall in Labour's appeal? Well, on some issues, they did have some bad luck. Releasing convicted criminals early is never going to be popular, but they had no choice. And Labour can't exactly be blamed for the far-right riots. But other errors have been self-inflicted, chief among them the cut to the winter fuel allowance. And it's difficult to avoid the conclusion that the whole party just gives off unnecessarily bad vibes. And that was something recognised by the former chief economist at the Bank of England, Andy Haldane.
I felt the mini fiscal event in July, the black hole event, was unnecessary and probably unhelpful, economically at least. I mean, the politics are above my pay grade, but on the economics, you know, it's one thing to reveal a black hole, if that indeed is what it is, but just leaving that to sit for 3 months, I think was a bad idea.
What should they have done then?
Well, I think it'd be much better to say nothing until you provide solutions to filling the black hole as well as revealing it. As it was, that's generated fear and foreboding, an uncertainty among consumers, among businesses, among investors in UK PLC, which is unfortunate because just after the election, there was a sense of refresh, a sense of renewal, a confidence about the UK, both domestically and internationally. And that just set it back on its heels a bit, which I felt was unnecessary, alongside the partial measures that were taken, which I think have also aroused some concerns about what might come next.
That was Andy Haldane, former chief economist at the Bank of England. So a very establishment guy. I mean, he's saying that all of this opening the book, saying we've inherited a terrible economy, everything's a disaster. He's saying that was, they maybe didn't need to do that. Aaron, have Labour overdone it with the bad vibes?
They have. They've overcooked it, Michael. They've overcooked it. The souffle has collapsed. I mean, that graphic you showed a moment ago about falling below 30% and how long it took. My goodness. I mean, somebody needs to tell Keir Starmer, Michael, that being unpopular is not the point of being in politics. You need to be popular because we're a democracy. The more popular you are, the better it is, actually. You want to be popular. Look, there's a few different takes on this. They're trying to front load the pain so that there's the sort of the political gain closer to being re-elected. I get it. But you don't get good vibes forever after being elected. You want to make the most of that. You want to make it land. You want to make it stick. And they've not done that. They've been in power 2.5 months. They've basically thrown it away. They've just thrown that away for no particular reason. And I can't quite grasp why. I can't quite grasp why. Is it the fact that they're trying to do 97 Redux a la Blair, except they don't have Alistair Campbell? Because there is no strategic communications going on right now. There is none. During the riots, there was zero. There was no strategic communications. Okay, what's our message to the country? What are the problems we're trying to solve? What's the vision we have for the country? And how does that fit with the short-term policies we're about to outline? Where's the congruence between micro and macro? That's what you're always trying to do with strategic communications. It literally doesn't exist. Whoever's meant to do that either should be fired or they should hire somebody because they don't have somebody doing it. That's the first point. And then secondly, on the winter fuel allowance, a few things, Michael. There's two big variables here which have shifted, which I think they're basically ignoring it. And by the way, Keir Starmer is governing as if he's just won 45% in the polls. Labour had this massive majority. However, if you look at the percentage of the vote that they won, there had never been a majority of one MP. A majority of one had never been gained off a popular vote of 33.5%. That had never happened before. This is the smallest ever share of the vote by a government to have a majority of one, let alone a majority of, 170 plus, 160 plus. That's never happened before. And Starmer is behaving like somebody who won 45% of the vote. And of course, that's where Labour started in the general election campaign, but they went from 45 to 33. But he's still behaving like Mr. 45. Anyway, what's changed is the layer of media and the layer of politics. And I was thinking about this when I saw the winter fuel allowance debate. Farage, next to a pensioner. I think he was a World War II veteran, saying how awful it is that Labour were taking money off this person. This is manna from heaven for reform. And the same for the Green Party. You have these two political parties now outside of the political mainstream really until 2024, frankly, who are they're actors. The Reform Party got 4 million plus. The Greens got almost 2 million. They got 6 million votes plus between them, and they're going to get more than that, by the way, at the next general election. And Starmer and Labour's strategy doesn't seem to be observing that shift. We saw this yesterday. The Greens won a councillor in Hackney. I think it's the first time the Greens have picked up a councillor in a by-election in a ward they didn't already have a councillor. In other words, in London, when Greens have picked up councillors for the first time in an area, it's been in local elections. So the fact this has been in a by-election, I think, is really significant. So at the layer of politics, things have changed. Reform and the Greens are going to take a ton of votes off them in both council and probably national elections going forward. And then there's also the layer of media. And this was really obvious during the race riots. I don't think Keir Starmer's polling and Labour's polling falls this fast without Elon Musk owning Twitter and without GB News. I think that's two variables that Labour are not accounting for. I don't think that they would be doing particularly well in the absence of those things, but I think it's clearly exacerbated the problem. And so all of a sudden, less than 3 months into a new government, or maybe 3 months into a new government, we have Labour on less than 30. Really striking. And of course, they could win a majority in the next general election because Reform are eating into that Tory vote so much. But I wouldn't bet on it. That poll, if you put Reform and the Tories together, blasting past Labour. And who knows, there might be some sort of deal between Reform and the Tories. We'll have some kind of electoral reform. We might bring in PR if you stand aside in XYZ seats. Now, you might think, Aaron, you're being outlandish. Nigel Farage seems to be pretty successful when he puts his mind to it at politics. Brexit was outlandish. Farage winning a Westminster seat was outlandish. They've both happened. So I wouldn't bet against it. I certainly wouldn't bet against it. And those are the kinds of waters now I think the British left needs to be swimming in. The possibility of a hung parliament in the next election. And who forms a government as a result. That's a very real possibility. I would still bet on a Labour majority, and by the way, my goodness, it's 4 or 5 years away, anything can happen. I'd still bet on a Labour majority of 40, 50, 60. But if you're looking at the percentages here, all of a sudden in this country, we're looking at a 5-6 party system. And with first past the post, that means all kinds of things. What it certainly doesn't mean, however, is a very clear, obvious outcome. Things could get very messy very quickly.